My kids demanded I sign over my house, calling me too old to manage. I did, but they didn't know I'd already donated it to charity. The message from Darian flashed on Aurelia's ancient smartphone, its bright screen a stark contrast to the quiet, dignified silence of her vast living room. Sunlight filtered through the delicate lace curtains, painted shifting patterns on the polished oak floors, illuminating dust motes dancing in the stillness. The air, usually redolent with the faint scent of aged wood and potpourri, seemed to hold a breath, anticipating the discord about to shatter its calm. Her fingers, gnarled with 78 years of life, yet still possessing a delicate grace, tapped open the text. It was short, blunt, and utterly devoid of any warmth, much like many of their recent interactions. Mom, Cassandra and I need to talk to you. It's about the house. We're coming over tomorrow morning at 10. Please be ready. Aurelia, a woman who had carried the quiet strength of a matriarch for decades, widowed for over a decade, felt a familiar dull ache spread through her chest. It was not a sudden pain, but a deep, persistent throb like an old bruise being pressed. It was the ache of expectation, of knowing precisely what was coming, for it had been building for months, a slow, insidious creep into the very fabric of her peace. Her only son, Darian, and his wife, Cassandra, had become increasingly brazen in their thinly veiled hints, their casual remarks about the impracticality of an elderly woman living alone in such a grand estate. They spoke of her age as if it were a disease, a flaw that diminished her capacity to manage her own life, let alone her considerable assets. Their words had often cut her deeply, not with the sharpness of anger, but with the dull edge of disappointment and the chilling realization that their affection, if it ever existed, was conditional upon her utility. This message, however, felt different. It was not a hint, it was a summons, a demand, a clear, unapologetic declaration of their intent to seize what they believed was rightfully theirs. Aurelia closed her eyes and a slow, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. It was not a smile of amusement, nor of resignation. It was one of grim satisfaction, a quiet triumph brewing beneath the surface of her placid exterior. For months she had been preparing for this exact moment. She had seen their avarice growing, a monstrous shadow consuming the last vestiges of their familial affection, rendering them unrecognizable. And she, Aurelia, the quiet, generous matriarch, who they had underestimated at every turn, had silently laid her trap. A complex, meticulously planned snare designed not out of malice, but out of a profound need to reclaim her dignity and set a long overdue record straight. The next morning, precisely at 10, a sleek, gleaming Porsche Cayenne, the latest model Cassandra had insisted upon just last year, and which Aurelia had, of course, paid for with a sigh she had hoped went unnoticed, pulled up the long, winding gravel driveway. The sound of its expensive tires crunching on the stones was an arrogant prelude to their arrival. Darian, a man of 52 who carried the entitled air of one who had never truly earned anything of significant value, stepped out first, adjusting the cuff of his expensive watch, a gift from his mother just last Christmas. Cassandra, 50, impeccably dressed in designer clothing that shrieked of wealth and status, followed, her eyes already scanning the grand facade of the house, undoubtedly envisioning her own touch on its historic walls, mentally stripping away its essence to replace it with something sterile and new. They entered without knocking, as was their custom for the past few years, a habit that had started subtly, with a hurried push of the door, and had since evolved into an unspoken assertion of ownership. Their voices already echoed through the high-ceilinged foyer, a jarring intrusion into the morning's tranquility. "Mom? Aurelia? We're here," Darian called out, his tone a practiced blend of casual authority and feigned concern, a performance Aurelia had grown weary of. Aurelia was seated in her favorite armchair by the fireplace, its velvet worn smooth by decades of quiet contemplation. A well-loved copy of an old novel, its pages slightly yellowed, lay open on her lap, though she hadn't turned a page in minutes. Her silver hair, neatly coiffed, framed a face that, despite the gentle etching of age, held a timeless beauty. Her eyes, though slightly faded with the passage of years, still retained a sharp, intelligent spark. There was a serene stillness about her, a tranquility that should have warned them, a quietude that belied the storm brewing within. But Darian and Cassandra were too consumed by their own desires, too blinded by their self-serving narratives, to notice the subtle shift in her demeanor, the steely resolve that had replaced her usual gentle compliance. "Good morning," Aurelia said, her voice clear and calm, utterly devoid of the usual slight tremor they had come to associate with her age, a tremor that had often made them feel superior, more in control. "Please sit." Darian took the sofa opposite her, leaning back with an air of proprietorship. Cassandra perched delicately on a velvet armchair, her gaze sweeping over the antique furniture, each piece a silent testament to Aurelia's life and memories, calculating its worth with an almost predatory glint in her eyes. Her fingers, adorned with a large sparkling diamond ring that Aurelia had paid for, tapped impatiently on the armrest. "Mom," Darian began, his voice softening into a condescending register he often reserved for her, a tone that implied she was frail, simple, and in need of their enlightened guidance. "We've been talking. Cassandra and I were worried about you." Cassandra nodded sagely, her expression a caricature of concern. "Yes, Aurelia. This house. It's simply too much for you. So big. So many stairs. The upkeep must be a nightmare." She paused, a practiced sigh escaping her lips, a dramatic gesture intended to convey deep empathy. "And you're not getting any younger. It's not practical for you to be here alone." A familiar wave of sadness washed over Aurelia, recalling how Edward had designed the house with wide hallways and an elevator, anticipating their old age, a testament to his loving foresight, now dismissed by their son's wife as an impractical burden. Aurelia listened, her expression unreadable, her mind a fortress. She had heard these sentiments countless times, each repetition chipping away at the fragile hope she once held for their genuine affection, each word a chisel on the monument of her fading illusion. She remembered countless family dinners where her attempts to share a memory or an opinion were met with Darian cutting her off mid-sentence, or Cassandra rolling her eyes, dismissing her as old-fashioned and irrelevant. "We've been discussing it at length," Darian continued, leaning forward, an earnest look on his face that was entirely for show, a performance perfected for business meetings and now deployed against his own mother. "And we think it's time for you to consider moving somewhere more suitable, perhaps a lovely assisted living facility, where you'll have companionship and all your needs met." Cassandra chimed in, her voice brimming with false enthusiasm, as if she were pitching a luxurious vacation. "Oh yes, we've even looked at a few. The Grand Oaks retirement home has a beautiful garden, and they have bridge nights, Aurelia. You'd love it. It's got a lovely dining hall, and you won't have to worry about cooking anymore. So convenient." The implication, clear as crystal, was that her current life was inconvenient, a burden, a problem to be solved for their benefit. Aurelia's gaze remained steady, fixed on their eager faces. They were so transparent, so utterly devoid of subtlety. The words assisted living and retirement home were merely preambles, a flimsy excuse for the true agenda that pulsed beneath their polite smiles, an agenda that shimmered with the golden glow of real estate. Darian cleared his throat, moving in for the kill. "And as for this house, Mom, it's our inheritance after all. And frankly, it's just sitting here appreciating in value but also becoming a burden for you. We believe it's time for you to sign it over to us. We can take care of it, maintain it properly, maybe even do some much-needed renovations. It would be our family home, a legacy for the grandchildren, a place where they can grow up, just as I did." His words hung in the air, audacious and utterly devoid of filial respect. They spoke of the house as if it were already theirs, a mere formality standing between them and their perceived birthright. They spoke of her home, the sanctuary she had built with her late husband, a place filled with laughter, tears, and precious memories, as if it were a neglected asset to be seized, a dilapidated property awaiting their benevolent intervention. Aurelia felt a pang, not of pain but of a cold, clear clarity. This was it, the moment she had foreseen. Aurelia slowly closed her book. Its gentle thud a surprisingly loud sound in the charged silence. She placed it precisely on the side table, her movements deliberate, unhurried. Her eyes met Darian's, then Cassandra's. There was no anger in them, no sadness, just an eerie calm. A profound stillness that was far more unsettling than any outburst. "So you want me to sign over the house to you?" she stated, not as a question, but as a confirmation of their blatant demand, a verbal echo of their own avarice. Darian nodded, a triumphant gleam in his eyes, a barely contained smirk on his lips. "Yes, Mom. It's for the best. For everyone. You're simply too old to manage it." Aurelia's smile, that same grim, knowing smile, returned, a private secret she held close. "Very well," she said, her voice a whisper of autumn leaves, dry and rustling with hidden purpose, barely audible, yet carrying immense weight. "I agree." Darian and Cassandra exchanged a quick, exultant look, barely stifling their cheers. Their eyes met, a silent congratulations passing between them. They had won. Or so they believed. They were utterly oblivious to the quiet, chilling undertone of her acceptance, unaware that the game they thought they were winning had, in fact, been rigged against them for months. The hook was set, and they were already on the line, swimming blindly into the current of her meticulously planned retribution. To understand Aurelia's chilling calm, one had to delve into the long, arduous years that had led to this precipice, this moment of quiet, calculated revenge. Her late husband, Edward, a man of quiet wisdom and immense foresight, had built a considerable fortune through shrewd investments and a successful manufacturing business. He was a man who understood the value of hard work, but also the importance of family, and he had envisioned a future of comfort and security for Aurelia, a life unburdened by financial worry. When he passed away 12 years ago, his absence left a gaping void in Aurelia's life, but he also left her not just a substantial inheritance, but also the sprawling family estate, a testament to their shared life, their dreams, and their enduring love. He had intended it all for her comfort, her security, and her peace of mind in her golden years, a sanctuary from the harshness of the world. But peace had been a fleeting visitor since Edward's passing. Darian, their only son, had always possessed a sense of entitlement, nurtured perhaps by Edward's initial indulgence and Aurelia's boundless love. Edward, in his quiet generosity, had sometimes provided Darian with advantages, hoping to set him on a path of success. But Darian had interpreted this as a birthright, a constant flow of unearned privilege. After Edward's death, this entitlement festered and grew, fueled by Cassandra's insatiable materialism. Cassandra, a woman who measured success by brand names, social climbing, and the envy of her peers, saw Aurelia not as a mother-in-law to be cherished, but as a living, breathing ATM, a limitless source of funds for her lavish lifestyle, a means to an end. Aurelia, in her profound grief and a desperate yearning to maintain a semblance of family unity, a connection to the life she had shared with Edward, had acquiesced. She wanted her son and his family to be happy, believing in her naive hope that her generosity would eventually foster genuine affection and respect. She had hoped that by providing for their every need, by cushioning their lives with comforts they could not afford themselves, they would see her as more than a benefactor. They would see her as a beloved matriarch, a source of love, not just money. But her hopes were continually dashed against the rocks of their unyielding selfishness, their bottomless pit of demands. The siphoning of her wealth began subtly, almost imperceptibly at first, like a slow leak. First, it was the grandchildren's private school tuition. "Mom, little Liam and Sophie simply must attend Maplewood Academy," Darian had pleaded, his voice laced with manufactured urgency. "The public schools just aren't good enough. It's for their future. We want them to have the best opportunities." Aurelia, wanting the best for her grandchildren, hoping for a genuine bond with them, had agreed, quietly paying the exorbitant fees, which grew year by year, escalating with each new program and facility. Every new textbook, every field trip to exotic locales, every designer sports uniform, every expensive extracurricular activity. Aurelia's bank account bore the burden. The children, raised in this environment of unearned luxury, grew up believing that money simply appeared effortlessly to fulfill their desires, never questioning its source, never understanding the quiet sacrifices behind it. Then came the cars. Darian had a comfortable executive job, but his salary barely covered his own indulgent habits, let alone Cassandra's extravagant tastes. "My old SUV is simply not reliable enough for client meetings, Mom," he'd sigh during a Sunday lunch, hinting broadly at its perceived inadequacies. Within weeks, a gleaming Mercedes-Benz GLE, far beyond his means, appeared in his driveway, paid for entirely by Aurelia. Cassandra, not to be outdone, soon deemed her own vehicle unfitting for her social standing. "All my friends drive European luxury cars, Aurelia," she'd whine, her voice dripping with self-pity. "I feel so pedestrian. My old sedan is just embarrassing to be seen in." Soon after, a sleek Porsche Cayenne, a vehicle nearly as expensive as a small house, joined the Mercedes. Aurelia, with a heavy heart, had written the checks, each stroke of the pen a silent prayer for their gratitude, a hope that was never answered. Their suburban home, a sprawling McMansion that cost twice what it should have, had been purchased with a hefty down payment from Aurelia. And when Darian occasionally struggled with the mortgage, it was Aurelia who discreetly transferred the funds to cover it, saving them from embarrassment, but never earning a word of thanks, not even a casual acknowledgement. It was simply expected. Vacations became an annual, then semi-annual expectation, presented not as a request, but as an undeniable necessity. "We simply must get away, Mom, the stress is unbearable," Cassandra would declare, as if Aurelia's financial contribution to their stress relief was a given. First-class tickets to Bali, 5-star resorts in the Maldives with private villas, extravagant European tours with private guides and designer luggage, all funded by Aurelia. She was rarely invited, and when she was, it felt more like an obligation for them than a genuine desire for her company. "Oh, it's too much walking for you, Mom," Darian would say, "or the food might upset your stomach," subtly excluding her, making her feel like a burden to their perfect, pampered excursions, a fragile inconvenience to their carefully curated paradise. Their conversations often revolved around her money, not her well-being. "You don't need all that money just sitting there, Mom," Darian would comment idly at family dinners, gesturing vaguely. "It's just depreciating. We could put it to good use. Real estate opportunities, you know." Cassandra would openly discuss remodeling plans for their future home, implying Aurelia's grand estate, right in front of her. "When we finally get the house, Darian, I want to knock out that wall between the kitchen and dining room. It's so old-fashioned. And that hideous wallpaper in the drawing room simply has to go. We'll put in a modern open-plan living space." Aurelia would sit there, her heart aching, listening to them dissect her future, her home, her very existence, as if she were already gone, a ghost in her own house. They called her old-fashioned, dismissed her opinions, and treated her like a relic of a bygone era, an obstacle to their progress. They rarely asked about her day, her health, or her feelings, unless it was to gauge her capacity to continue funding their lifestyle. The final straw had not been a single event, but the insidious, relentless erosion of her dignity, a gradual chipping away at her spirit. It was the way Darian would cut her off mid-sentence, the way Cassandra would roll her eyes when Aurelia offered an opinion, the sheer, unbridled expectation in their voices when they requested yet another 5-figure sum, as if it were their birthright and her duty. Aurelia felt herself shrinking, becoming a mere appendage to their lives, an automated teller machine with a pulse, a source of endless extraction. One quiet afternoon, after Darian had casually informed her that her old-fashioned car was no longer safe for her to drive, and that he would arrange for a new luxury sedan to be delivered, at her expense of course, because his mother deserved the best, as long as he didn't have to pay for it, Aurelia had a moment of profound clarity. She sat in her beloved rose garden, the scent of blooming roses filling the air, a scent Edward had always loved. She looked around her beautiful home, filled with memories of a life well lived, a life of love and partnership, a life Edward had so carefully nurtured. And she realized that this house, this symbol of her past, her security, her sanctuary, was becoming a cage, a gilded prison from which her greedy family sought to extract every last ounce of her worth, leaving her an empty husk. It was then months ago that Aurelia made her decision. With a quiet resolve that would have astonished her family, had they been paying any attention, she contacted Mr. Davies, her longtime family lawyer. Mr. Davies, a man of unimpeachable integrity, whose wisdom she had come to rely on over the years, listened patiently as Aurelia explained her growing disillusionment, the years of quiet exploitation. He had seen countless families fractured by greed, but the depth of Aurelia's silent suffering, her dignified pain, was particularly poignant. Mr. Davies, Aurelia had stated, her voice firm despite the tremor that sometimes touched her hands when she spoke of her son, I want to donate my house, not to my family, to a charity, a children's charity. She saw the faint surprise in his eyes, quickly replaced by understanding. Mr. Davies had been surprised but quickly understood the depth of her decision, the profound hurt that lay beneath it. They had meticulously gone through the process, leaving no stone unturned, ensuring every legal loophole was closed. Aurelia chose the Children's Haven Foundation, an organization dedicated to providing safe homes and education for underprivileged children, a cause that resonated deeply with her desire for genuine impact. The legal paperwork was complex, ensuring the donation was irrevocable, with no possibility of her family contesting it. The transfer process began, slow and deliberate, designed to be finalized at a precise strategic moment. Aurelia had instructed Mr. Davies to complete the final transfer of ownership, the ultimate irrevocable step, only when her children explicitly demanded the house. She had foreseen their ultimate audacity, their inevitable move to claim her home, and she had prepared her countermove with the precision of a master chess player, waiting for the perfect moment to checkmate their greed. The day after Darian and Cassandra's triumphant departure from her home, believing their victory was secured, Aurelia began to execute the second phase of her plan. There was a serene, almost detached quality to her movements as she retrieved her phone, a quiet hum of satisfaction deep within her. The calm resolve that had settled upon her was now a quiet force, stronger than any anger she might have felt, more potent than any lingering sadness. She was no longer reactive. She was proactive, taking back control of her life, one deliberate step at a time, each action a whisper of defiance. Her first call was to Mr. Davies. "Good morning, Mr. Davies," she said, her voice steady, a newfound lightness in her tone. "They came yesterday. They demanded the house." "And you agreed, Aurelia?" Mr. Davies asked, a hint of admiration in his tone, a quiet respect for her fortitude. He knew the depths of her pain, and he respected the courage it had taken to reach this point, to turn her suffering into a purposeful act. "Yes," Aurelia confirmed. The exact words were, "You're too old to manage it. Sign it over to us." "So, as per our arrangement, I accepted." "Excellent, Aurelia," Mr. Davies replied, his voice equally resolute. "The final paperwork for the Children's Haven Foundation has been waiting for your signal. I will finalize the transfer of ownership this very morning. By the end of the day, the property will be irrevocably theirs, with no legal recourse for anyone else." Aurelia felt a profound sense of relief wash over her, a burden she hadn't realized the full weight of until it began to lift. The largest burden, the symbol of their endless greed, the constant source of their demands, was now truly out of their reach. "Thank you, Mr. Davies," she said, her voice filled with a gratitude that transcended mere politeness, a deep appreciation for his unwavering support. "You've been an invaluable ally." Next, Aurelia called her bank. She spoke to a personal banker, a polite young woman named Sarah, who had handled her accounts for years and knew the patterns of Aurelia's generous transfers to her son and his family. Aurelia's voice was clear and firm as she systematically listed every recurring payment, every automatic transfer, every authorized credit card linked to her accounts for Darian and Cassandra's benefit. "Sarah," Aurelia began, her voice unwavering, I need to cancel all automatic payments for Darian Thorne, Cassandra Thorne, and any payments associated with their children's school, Maplewood Academy. This includes their credit card bills, their car loan payments, their house mortgage payments, and any utility bills I've been covering for their residents. She heard a slight intake of breath on the other end of the line. Sarah, accustomed to Aurelia's consistent financial support of her family, paused for a moment, clearly surprised by the sudden drastic change. Mrs. Thorne, are you quite sure? That's a significant number of transactions, and some of them are quite substantial. Your son and daughter-in-law rely on these payments. I am absolutely sure, Sarah, Aurelia affirmed, her resolve unwavering, her voice gaining a steely edge. Effective immediately. I also want to revoke any power of attorney Darian might have had over any of my accounts. And please ensure that no further transfers or payments can be made without my direct, explicit authorization. I will be reviewing my accounts personally. Sarah, sensing the gravity in Aurelia's voice, the finality of her decision, assured her that everything would be processed within the hour. Aurelia then requested a detailed statement of all her accounts, consolidating her remaining funds into a single, more manageable account that she controlled entirely, a pristine new slate. The process was methodical, efficient, and utterly final. As she hung up the phone, Aurelia felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. The invisible chains that had bound her to their insatiable demands, the silent burden she had carried, were finally definitively severed. She felt a profound sense of liberation. The immediate ripple effects were, for Aurelia, a source of grim satisfaction, a quiet internal smile. Darian and Cassandra, basking in their perceived victory, were completely oblivious to the financial earthquake about to hit them, the ground about to crumble beneath their feet. It started subtly. Cassandra, on her usual afternoon shopping spree at an exclusive designer boutique, a place where she was accustomed to deference and instant gratification, handed over her credit card for a new, obscenely expensive handbag, a limited edition naturally. The sales assistant's face, usually deferential, shifted to an apologetic frown. I'm terribly sorry, Mrs. Thorne, but your card has been declined. Cassandra, mortified, snatched the card back, her face flushing with indignation. That's impossible. There must be a mistake. Try it again. She tried another, then another, each one linked to Aurelia's accounts, and each met with the same humiliating rejection, the electronic denials echoing in the hushed boutique. Her face, usually so composed, contorted into a mask of disbelief and budding panic. She stormed out of the boutique, seething, blaming an imaginary banking error, refusing to acknowledge the possibility of a deeper problem. That evening, Darian received an urgent, terse email from the administration of Maplewood Academy. Dear Mr. Thorne, we regret to inform you that your children's tuition payment for the current term is now significantly overdue. Unless immediate payment is received, Liam and Sophie will be unable to attend classes starting next week. Darian stared at the email, confused. His mother always handled the tuition, a seamless, invisible process. He shot her a quick text. Mom, what's going on with the school payment? They're saying it's overdue. Did you forget to send the check? Aurelia, sipping her chamomile tea, saw the message flash on her phone. She simply typed a reply. Perhaps you should look into it, Darian. I'm sure it's just an oversight. Her fingers lingered on the send button, a quiet satisfaction blossoming in her chest. The next day the calls began. The car loan companies, their voices polite but firm, demanding immediate payment for the luxury vehicles Aurelia had financed. A utility company calling about an impending shut-off notice for Darian and Cassandra's suburban home. The frantic tone in their voices escalated with each failed transaction, each bill suddenly their own responsibility, each luxury turning into a liability. What in God's name is happening, Darian? Cassandra shrieked into the phone later that day, her voice raw with panic, utterly devoid of its usual cultivated calm. My car payment bounced. They're threatening to repossess the Porsche. And my credit cards are all maxed out. They won't even process a small coffee. Darian, equally distraught, paced their lavish living room, the space suddenly feeling suffocating, demanding. I don't know. The school is calling. The mortgage company is calling. It's like Mom just turned off the tap. But why? We just talked yesterday. She agreed to everything. She said she'd sign over the house. They tried calling Aurelia, but her phone went straight to voicemail. She was not avoiding them, not exactly. She was simply allowing the consequences of their actions to cascade upon them, letting them flounder in the financial abyss she had created, the vacuum left by her absence. The slow, creeping realization that something was terribly, irrevocably wrong had begun to sink in. Their world, built on the fragile foundation of Aurelia's silent generosity, was crumbling around them, piece by agonizing piece. The tension was building, a storm gathering on the horizon, ready to break in the most explosive way imaginable. The storm broke 2 days later. Darian and Cassandra, their faces haggard, their usual polished veneer shattered, arrived at Aurelia's home, not in the sleek Porsche, but in an older, less conspicuous car Darian had hastily borrowed from a friend, a rental from the neighborhood garage. They didn't bother with the feigned politeness this time. They burst through the front door, their panic a palpable presence in the quiet house, their fear a chilling wind blowing through its hallowed halls. Mom! What have you done? Darian roared, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and fury, his eyes wide with disbelief. Cassandra stood beside him, her eyes wide with a desperate, unshed terror, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. Aurelia was again seated in her armchair, a new book, a classic she had always meant to read, open in her lap. She looked up, her expression calm, almost pitying, observing them with a detached, clinical gaze. Good morning, Darian. Cassandra. What seems to be the trouble? Her voice was soft, but it cut through their agitation like ice, a calm blade through their escalating panic. Trouble? Cassandra shrieked, her carefully constructed composure completely gone, her voice raw with a sudden, overwhelming despair. Our credit cards are maxed out. The school says the children are being expelled. My car is about to be repossessed. Our house, they sent a foreclosure notice. What have you done to us? Do you even realize the ruin you've brought upon your own family? Darian stepped forward, his face contorted, not with anger, but with a desperate, bewildered rage. Why did you cut us off, Mom? After everything we've done for you, after you agreed to sign over the house. This is sabotage. Do you know what you're doing to your own son? To your grandchildren? Their lives are being destroyed. Aurelia slowly placed her book down, her movements deliberate, unhurried, emphasizing the gravitas of the moment. She rose from the chair, her posture surprisingly erect, her eyes meeting theirs without flinching, without a trace of the usual deference they expected. For years she had been a quiet observer, a silent giver, a passive recipient of their demands. Now she was about to speak, and every word would be a hammer blow, each syllable loaded with years of unspoken truth. What I've done, Darian, is finally stop enabling your ruinous lives, Aurelia stated, her voice clear and strong, without a hint of the usual tremor or the slight deference they expected from their aging mother. And as for the house, I did agree to sign it over. Darian and Cassandra exchanged a quick, confused glance, a flicker of hope amidst their despair. Then why are you doing this? Darian blurted out, his voice tinged with a desperate plea for understanding. We need the house. We're counting on it. We were going to sell our place, move in here, finally have some financial stability. This was our plan. Oh, you were counting on it, were you? Aurelia's lips curved into a faint, chilling smile, a ghost of her grim satisfaction. You were counting on your inheritance, weren't you? Just as you've counted on my money for everything else in your lives. For your luxury cars, your exotic vacations, your designer clothes, your children's exorbitant school fees. Even the down payment on that absurdly oversized house of yours, the one you couldn't afford on your own. You have depended on me for every comfort, every perceived necessity, every whim. Her voice gained power with each accusation, each word a stone hitting their consciences, though they barely registered it through their thick veil of panic and entitlement. How dare you? Cassandra cried, tears of frustration, not remorse, finally streaming down her face, ruining her carefully applied makeup. We are your family. We deserve this. You're old, Aurelia. You're losing your mind. This is elder abuse. You're neglecting us, abandoning us. Elder abuse? Aurelia's eyes flashed with a cold fire, a spark of indignation she had kept carefully banked for years. Is that what you call it? Or is it perhaps that the ATM has finally run dry? The well from which you've drawn endless, unearned luxury has finally been capped? Is it abuse to stop being exploited? Darian, seeing that emotional manipulation wasn't working, switched to threats, his voice dropping to a low, menacing tone. If you don't reverse this, Mom, we'll take you to court. We'll fight for what's ours. You'll regret this. You'll be sorry. Aurelia let him finish, her gaze unwavering, unflinching. Regret, she echoed, the word hanging in the air. Darian, Cassandra, I have regretted many things in my life. I've regretted the years I allowed myself to be used, to be seen as nothing more than a bank account with a pulse. I regret it every time I hoped that my generosity would somehow buy me your love, your respect, your affection. I regret it every time I listened to your condescending remarks about my age, about my old-fashioned ways, while you openly discussed how you would spend my money, my legacy, my home right in front of me, as if I were already gone, a mere placeholder. She paused, taking a deep breath, and then delivered the blow they would never recover from, the truth that would shatter their illusions. But this I do not regret. In fact, I have never felt more at peace, more resolute, or more free. Aurelia walked slowly towards the antique secretary desk in the corner of the room, her movements deliberate, almost ceremonial. She opened a drawer, its soft creak echoing in the strained silence, and retrieved a single official-looking document, crisp and authoritative. She held it up, its seal visible, its legal weight unmistakable. You asked me to sign over the house, Darian. And I agreed. Her voice was a soft whisper now, but it carried the weight of years of silent suffering, now culminating in a devastating truth, a truth that would reshape their entire world. I signed over the house months ago. Darian and Cassandra exchanged a quick, confused look, a flicker of triumphant bewilderment. Then why are we having all these financial problems? Darian blurted out, the pieces not fitting together in his panicked mind. Because, Aurelia continued, her voice rising, each word a hammer blow to their entitled fantasies, each syllable a nail in the coffin of their greed. I signed it over to the Children's Haven Foundation. The words hung in the air, shattering their world. Darian's face went slack, then pale, as if all the blood had drained from him. Cassandra's jaw dropped, her tears momentarily forgotten, replaced by a ghastly silent scream. What? Darian whispered, his voice hoarse with disbelief, a pathetic croak. What are you talking about? That's impossible. This house, Darian, has not been mine for months, Aurelia explained, her voice devoid of emotion, a clinical recitation of facts, each one undeniable. I anticipated your greed. I saw it growing, consuming you, turning you into strangers. I saw that this house, my home, would become nothing more than another pawn in your endless pursuit of unearned wealth, another asset to be plundered. So I took steps. I spoke with Mr. Davies, my lawyer. We meticulously arranged for its donation to a legitimate, admirable children's charity, an organization that truly knows the meaning of need and gratitude. She held up the document, a final, unassailable piece of evidence. The final transfer was completed this morning, precisely as you demanded I sign over the house. It is no longer my property. It is now irrevocably, legally, and entirely the property of the Children's Haven Foundation. You cannot contest it. You cannot claim it. It is gone. Your inheritance, your perceived right, has been given to those who will truly benefit. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Cassandra's choked sob, a primal sound of utter devastation. Their faces were a tableau of utter ruin, disbelief, horror, and then raw, unadulterated panic, the dawning realization of their utter ruin. The grand estate, their perceived future, their endless source of wealth, had vanished like smoke, dissolved into thin air. No, no, you can't, Cassandra wailed, collapsing onto the velvet armchair, her hands clutching her head, as if to contain the fragments of her shattered world. You can't do this. This is our inheritance. Our children's future. You're destroying us. Your children's future, Aurelia stated, her voice resonating with an authority they had never heard, a quiet power that commanded attention, is now in your hands, Darian. And yours, Cassandra. Not mine. You have squandered every opportunity, every gift I have given you. You have taken my generosity for granted, and in return, you have given me nothing but disrespect and a complete lack of genuine affection. You have shown no gratitude, no love, only a consuming desire for more. She looked directly at Darian, her eyes piercing him, seeing through his entitled facade. You called me too old to manage. You suggested a nursing home. You planned your renovations in my presence, openly discussing how you would strip my home of its character. You saw me as an obstacle to be moved, a resource to be exploited, a nuisance to be dealt with. Well, I have moved. I have acted. And now you must manage your own lives. Without my money, without my house, and without my pity. Darian found his voice a desperate, pathetic plea, the last vestiges of his arrogance stripped away. Mom, please. We'll change. We'll be better. Just reverse it. Find a way. We'll lose everything. What about the children? Aurelia shook her head slowly, a faint, almost sad smile on her lips, a look of profound finality. There is no way, Darian. It is done. It is irrevocable. This house, which you believed was your right, now belongs to children who truly need it, children who will cherish the safety and opportunities it provides. Children who, unlike you, will grow up understanding the true meaning of gratitude and the value of a helping hand, because they will have known true hardship. She looked at their shattered faces, at the dawning realization of their utter ruin, the depth of their self-inflicted misery. This, Aurelia concluded, her voice gaining a quiet, triumphant strength, is what true freedom feels like. The climax had passed and the fall had begun. Darian and Cassandra stumbled out of Aurelia's house, their earlier bluster replaced by a sickening, hollow dread that gnawed at their insides. The grand front door closed behind them with a definitive thud, a sound that echoed the finality of their new reality, a door slamming shut on their past of unearned luxury. They climbed into the borrowed car in a daze, the silence between them heavy with accusation and despair, each blaming the other, neither looking inward. She can't do this, Cassandra finally whispered, her voice raw, choked with unshed tears and a fresh wave of panic. She absolutely cannot. It's illegal. It's unfair. It's a trick. She repeatedly called her mother's phone, only to be met with the cold, impersonal sound of voicemail. She did, Cassandra. She did, Darian muttered, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white, his mind racing, desperate for a loophole, a way out of the disaster Aurelia had so meticulously orchestrated. We need to call our lawyer. Now. He'll fix this. He has to. Their first call was to Mr. Thompson, their own corporate lawyer, who usually handled their minor legal skirmishes and property matters, the man they paid to smooth over their excesses. Darian, almost incoherent with panic, explained the situation, his voice rising in pitch with each desperate sentence. Mr. Thompson listened patiently, then delivered the devastating news with professional detachment. Darian, if what you're saying is true, and your mother genuinely and legally donated the property to a registered charity, and the transfer is complete, then there is virtually no recourse. Your mother is of sound mind, there's no evidence of coercion, and the charity is legitimate. You have no legal claim to an inheritance that was never yours in the first place, especially not when the asset has been legally transferred. It's ironclad, Darian, completely irrevocable. I'm truly sorry, but there's nothing I can do. The words hit them like a physical blow. Irrevocable. The term echoed in their minds, a death knell to their lavish future, a chilling pronouncement of their ruin. But Darian, desperate, refused to accept it. He called the Children's Haven Foundation, feigning concern and claiming his mother had made a mistake due to her age, implying she was senile. The foundation's legal team, however, was professional and unyielding. They confirmed the donation, the thoroughness of the process, and the absolute finality of the transfer. The house, they stated, was now officially their property, to be used for the benefit of children in need, children who now had a home because of Aurelia's generosity. As the days turned into a week, the cold, hard reality of their situation began to set in with brutal force. The luxury cars, the gleaming Mercedes and the sleek Porsche, were repossessed. The finance companies, no longer receiving Aurelia's quiet, regular payments, sent stern notices, followed quickly by the tow trucks. Darian and Cassandra watched, horrified, from their living room window as their symbols of status were unceremoniously hauled away, their once proud engines silent. The humiliation was immense, as neighbors peered from behind curtains, whispering, their judgment palpable. The private school, true to their word, expelled Liam and Sophie. The children, bewildered and upset by the sudden upheaval, were forced to attend a local public school, a notion utterly alien to their privileged upbringing. Their friends from equally affluent backgrounds quickly distanced themselves, and the Thorne children became the subject of uncomfortable whispers in the school corridors, marked by their sudden fall from grace. Then came the final crushing blow for their social standing: the foreclosure notice on their own suburban home. Without Aurelia's consistent, discreet payments, their mortgage, already precariously high due to their overspending, became impossible to manage. They were forced to put the house on the market, but the plummeting local real estate market, combined with their desperate need to sell quickly, meant they would likely lose a significant sum, potentially even facing bankruptcy. Their lavish lifestyle, once the envy of their social circle, had utterly collapsed. Dinners out became a luxury, designer clothes a distant memory, and exotic vacations an impossible dream. Arguments between Darian and Cassandra became constant, bitter, filled with recriminations and blame, their once solid marriage fracturing under the weight of their financial woes. Their carefully constructed world, built on the shifting sands of another's generosity, had finally crumbled. While Darian and Cassandra spiraled into a vortex of panic and desperation, consumed by their own self-pity, Aurelia was embarking on the first steps of her new life. The quiet satisfaction that had settled upon her had deepened into a profound sense of peace. She no longer felt the invisible burden of their endless demands, the constant drain on her emotional and financial resources. The weight that had pressed down on her for so long had lifted, allowing her to breathe freely for the first time in years. That same afternoon, after their explosive confrontation, Aurelia made a phone call she had been longing to make for years. It was to Eleanor, a dear friend from her youth, with whom she had lost touch due to Darian and Cassandra's subtle disapproval of her unimportant friendships, preferring her to entertain their affluent acquaintances. "Eleanor? It's Aurelia," she said, a genuine smile gracing her lips, a lightness in her voice Eleanor hadn't heard in years. "Aurelia! My goodness, it's been ages. How wonderful to hear from you." Eleanor's voice was warm, welcoming, instantly bridging the gap of years. "It has been, hasn't it?" Aurelia replied, a joyous lightness in her tone. "Listen, Eleanor, I've had a rather eventful few days, and I was wondering if you might be free for lunch next week? There's a wonderful little cafe downtown I've been meaning to try, a place with the most delightful pastries." Eleanor readily agreed, her excitement palpable, and Aurelia felt a surge of pure, unadulterated joy. It was a small step, a seemingly insignificant gesture, but a profoundly significant one. She was reclaiming her life, her friendships, her own simple pleasures, rediscovering the woman she had been before the demands of her family consumed her. Later, she sat in her living room, no longer feeling the oppressive weight of its looming transfer, no longer feeling like a caretaker for an asset that was not truly hers. She browsed travel brochures, something she hadn't dared to do for herself in years, always prioritizing Darian and Cassandra's extravagant trips, always putting their desires before her own. A small, cozy bed and breakfast in the Scottish Highlands caught her eye, nestled amidst rolling green hills and misty lochs. It was modest, charming, and exactly what she needed, a quiet retreat for reflection and renewal. She picked up the phone, a newfound sense of freedom guiding her fingers, a lightness in her heart. She booked a solo trip for herself, for no other reason than her own quiet enjoyment. The future, once a source of anxiety, now stretched before her, an open road full of possibilities she alone would choose to explore. Months later, the grand family home, once the silent stage for Aurelia's quiet suffering and her family's brazen greed, buzzed with new life. Children's laughter echoed through its halls, not the occasional strained giggles of her entitled grandchildren, but the genuine uninhibited joy of children who had found a safe haven, a place of hope and opportunity. The Children's Haven Foundation had transformed a portion of the estate into a learning center and temporary residence for at-risk youth. Its sprawling gardens now filled with swings and brightly colored play equipment, a stark contrast to the manicured, but sterile, lawns of the past. Aurelia sometimes would drive by, a serene smile on her face, observing the vibrant activity, feeling no regret, only a profound satisfaction that her legacy was truly making a difference, touching lives in a meaningful way. Aurelia herself had moved into a charming, much smaller cottage on the outskirts of town. It was cozy, manageable, and entirely her own, filled with pieces of furniture she truly loved, not just inherited. She had reconnected with old friends, forming new, genuine bonds. She had joined a local book club, finding joy in shared literary discussions, and even started taking pottery classes, something she had always wanted to do but never had the time or the emotional energy for, always putting others first. Her days were now filled with simple pleasures: gardening, long walks in the park, quiet evenings reading by her own fireplace, and lively conversations with newfound acquaintances who valued her for who she was, not what she possessed. She spent her money not on lavish gifts for ungrateful relatives, but on experiences for herself, on small luxuries that brought her genuine joy, and on quiet donations to causes she believed in, causes that mirrored her newfound sense of purpose. She no longer carried the heavy burden of managing Darian and Cassandra's lives. The constant dread of their next demand, the gnawing pain of their disrespect, the bitter taste of their ingratitude had lifted, leaving her free, light, and authentically happy. Her silver hair seemed to gleam brighter, her eyes sparkled with a newfound vitality, a reflection of her inner peace. Aurelia, at 78, was finally living a life truly her own, unburdened by the parasitic demands of her ungrateful family, a life she had bravely reclaimed. Darian and Cassandra, on the other hand, had faced a harsh reckoning. They had lost their house, forcing them to rent a modest apartment in a less desirable neighborhood, a stark contrast to their sprawling McMansion. Darian, stripped of his easy access to Aurelia's funds, had been forced to take on extra shifts at a job he once considered beneath him, struggling to make ends meet without his mother's financial safety net. Cassandra, no longer able to maintain her luxurious lifestyle, had grudgingly taken a part-time retail job, something she had once scoffed at as utterly plebeian, her designer clothes now gathering dust in the back of a cramped closet. Their social circle had largely evaporated, leaving them isolated and bitter, their former friends uncomfortable with their sudden change in fortune. The children, Liam and Sophie, struggled to adapt to their new, drastically scaled-back reality, resentful of their parents for the sudden loss of their privileged lives, their resentment often spilling over into arguments. Their once close, albeit transactional, relationship with Aurelia had disintegrated entirely. They rarely spoke, and when they did, it was laced with resentment and thinly veiled accusations, a testament to their continued inability to take responsibility. They had been forced to learn, in the most painful way possible, the consequences of their actions, the true cost of their avarice. Aurelia's story served as a powerful testament. Genuine love and respect cannot be bought with money. They are earned through kindness, empathy, and mutual appreciation, through actions that speak louder than words or material possessions. For years, Aurelia had poured her heart and her fortune into a family that saw her only as a means to an end, a bottomless ATM. But in her moment of ultimate clarity, she chose herself. She chose her dignity, her peace, and her intrinsic worth over the endless, thankless cycle of their exploitation. Her actions were not born of malice, but of self-preservation, a quiet, powerful act of justice, a reclamation of her own narrative. It was a poignant reminder that while it is noble to give, it is equally vital to protect oneself from those who seek to drain one dry. Sometimes the greatest act of love is the love one shows for oneself, setting boundaries and reclaiming the very essence of one's being, even from those closest to you. Aurelia's journey is a powerful reminder that justice, though sometimes slow, can be profoundly satisfying. Her story, a tale of quiet strength and reclaiming one's worth, resonates deeply with the core of what we believe in here on our channel. We strive to bring you true stories of resilience, unexpected twists, and the triumph of the human spirit over adversity. If Aurelia's story moved you, if it sparked a sense of satisfaction at the justice served, then you're in the right place. We have many more narratives of people who stood up for themselves, defied expectations, and found their own paths to freedom. Don't miss out on our next compelling story. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell, so you're always the first to know when a new video drops. And now we want to hear from you. Have you ever faced such blatant ingratitude from someone you loved and helped? What would you have done if you were in Aurelia's shoes, facing such disrespect and greed from your own family? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We read every single one, and your stories truly enrich our community. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.